The first thing I smelled when I walked into my own house after 18 months in Afghanistan was bacon. Not my bacon. Some stranger's bacon sizzling in my grandmother's old cast-iron skillet. And if that wasn't weird enough, there were two kids sitting at my kitchen table eating cereal like they'd lived there their whole lives, while a man I'd never seen before was stretched out on my couch watching daytime TV. I stood there in the doorway, duffel bag hanging off my shoulder, boots still dusty from travel, and for a second I honestly wondered if I had walked into the wrong house. But no, that dent in the hallway wall from when I tried to move a motorcycle engine through there 3 years ago. Still there. The old wooden clock above the stove, mine. The coffee mug rack I built out of scrap oak, mine too. Everything was mine. Except apparently the people. The woman at the stove looked over her shoulder at me like I had just wandered into her kitchen uninvited. "Excuse me," she said. Not nervous. Not surprised. Just annoyed. You know that tone someone uses when a delivery driver shows up at the wrong address? Yeah, that tone. I blinked a couple times, trying to make sense of it. "I think you're in my house." She laughed. Actually laughed. Then she reached over to the counter, picked up a sheet of paper, and waved it toward me like a flag. "We rent here," she said. "Legally." Her husband looked over from the couch and gave me this polite little nod like we were neighbors meeting for the first time. "I'm Carlos," he said. That was the moment my brain finally started catching up with reality. I stepped farther into the kitchen and looked at the paper. Lease agreement. My address. Signed by someone named Margaret Whitfield. And that name, yeah, that name hit me like stepping on a rake. Because Margaret Whitfield wasn't some landlord. Margaret Whitfield was the president of the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association. Let me back up a sec. My name's Jake Brennan. I'm 28, third-generation Army, and until recently my biggest life achievement was buying my first house, a small 3-bedroom ranch on Maple Ridge Drive. Nothing fancy. Beige siding, squeaky garage door, backyard big enough to rebuild motorcycles and burn burgers on a cheap grill. But to me it was everything. See, I didn't grow up with a house. My parents died in a car crash when I was 8. After that it was foster homes, group homes, bouncing around like a pinball. The Army was the first place that ever felt stable. So when I used my VA loan to buy that house, man, that felt like planting a flag. My place. My garage. My life. And for a year and a half it was perfect. Then January 2023 rolled around, and my unit got orders to Afghanistan. Before I left, I did everything right. Mortgage on autopay. Utilities set. Mail forwarded. I even told the HOA at the January meeting. Margaret Whitfield sat right there at the folding table with her pearl necklace and clipboard, nodding like she cared. "Thank you for your service, Jake," she said sweetly. "We'll make sure everything stays in order while you're gone." Yeah, that aged well. Margaret Whitfield was the kind of woman who walked into a room like she owned oxygen. 52 years old, permanent tight smile, drove a white Lexus that looked like it had never seen a parking lot without a manicure appointment nearby. She'd been the HOA president for 6 years. And Sunset Hills, well, let's just say that neighborhood took its rules very seriously. Grass too tall? Violation notice. Trash cans visible for 12 minutes after pickup? Violation notice. Christmas lights up on January 2nd? Oh buddy, that's basically a felony. Margaret loved that power. Loved it. What I didn't know back then was that she used to be a real estate agent until the state yanked her license after some shady deals involving falsified property disclosures. But losing that license didn't kill her appetite for control. It just redirected it, right into the HOA. 3 months into my deployment, I got an email from a neighbor, Mrs. Fiona. Sweetest 70-year-old woman you'll ever meet. Walks with a cane, but still bakes cookies for half the street. "Jake dear," the email said, "I tried to mow your lawn, but the mower is a bit heavy." Margaret left a notice. Sure enough, there it was, a photo of a bright orange violation sticker taped to my door. Grass height exceeds community standard. I laughed it off at the time. I mean, come on, I was literally halfway around the world. But Margaret didn't laugh. Because that notice was step 1. Step 2 came about a month later. According to a bizarre HOA clause buried in the bylaws, if a home appeared vacant for more than 90 days without proper notification, the board could declare it abandoned for community management purposes. Now remember, I told them I was deploying. Margaret knew exactly where I was. But that didn't stop her. She filed paperwork claiming she couldn't reach me. Backdated notices. Certified letters supposedly sent to an address in Afghanistan that didn't even exist. Then she took the final step. She listed my house for rent on Craigslist. Yeah, my house. Turns out Maria, the woman cooking bacon in my kitchen that morning, was a nurse at the county hospital. Her husband Carlos worked construction. They had 2 kids and needed a place quickly. Margaret told them the house belonged to an absentee military owner who abandoned the property. She collected an $8,000 deposit. Cash. For 8 months they lived there thinking everything was legitimate, while I was overseas running patrols. You know what the weird part is? I wasn't even angry at Maria and Carlos. They looked terrified once the truth started clicking. Carlos stood up and said, "Man, if this is your house, we had no idea." And I believed him. Because scams like that don't work unless the victims trust the person running them. Margaret had that neighborhood trained. Which is why it got real interesting when she walked through my front door about 30 seconds later. Designer purse. Perfect hair. Same smug expression. "Oh," she said, stopping in the hallway like she'd just discovered a stray dog in the kitchen. "Jake, you're back early." Early. 18 months. I looked at her and said the calmest thing I could manage. "You rented my house." She crossed her arms. "Property abandonment requires HOA intervention." I actually laughed at that. "You mean deployment?" She shrugged. "You didn't respond to our letters." Now here's the thing. Margaret thought she had this locked down. Fake paperwork. Fake notices. Fake authority. What she didn't expect was that soldiers get very good at spotting lies. 2 days later, I was sitting in the county recorder's office digging through property filings. And guess what? There was no abandonment filing. Not one. Meaning legally she had zero authority to do anything she did. So I called Veterans Legal Aid. That's when Sarah Rodriguez entered the story. 5'2", sharp eyes, and the kind of attorney who smiles when she smells a federal violation. She spread the documents across her desk and said 4 words I'll never forget. "Oh, this is beautiful. Forgery. Fraud. Violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act." That last one. Federal protection for deployed soldiers. Meaning Margaret hadn't just broken HOA rules. She broke federal law. And when she realized we were building a case, she panicked. First she tried intimidation. Letters to Maria and Carlos saying they'd be evicted immediately. Then she tried something dumber. She broke into my garage. At 2 in the morning. Trying to plant documents that proved she had my consent to manage the property. Problem was I'd installed security cameras before deployment. And there she was. Crystal clear. Pearl necklace and all. When the police showed up the next morning, she tried that same smug routine. "Oh, officer, this is just a misunderstanding." Yeah. That didn't last long once they watched the footage. Seeing Margaret Whitfield in handcuffs on my driveway, man, I'm not gonna lie. That felt pretty good. But the real twist? It wasn't just me. Once the investigation started, neighbors began coming forward. An elderly couple she pressured into selling. A military family she fined thousands over architectural violations. Fake repair contracts. Missing HOA funds. Turns out Margaret had been running her own little empire for years. It just took one soldier coming home to crack the foundation. 6 months later the courtroom was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up. Mrs. Fiona sat in the front row gripping her cane like it was a baseball bat. Margaret didn't look smug anymore. 15 years. Federal prison. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The judge didn't even hesitate. And when the gavel came down, the whole room exhaled. Now here's the funny part. Maria and Carlos still live down the street. We helped them find a place after everything blew up. Carlos sometimes comes over on Sundays to help me rebuild motorcycles. And my house? Yeah, it's still mine. Same squeaky garage door. Same dent in the hallway. Same old cast iron skillet. Except now when I cook bacon in that kitchen, it smells a lot better knowing nobody's trying to steal the place out from under me. So here's something I've been wondering ever since all this happened. What would you do if you came home after serving your country and someone else was living in your house? Would you have fought back the way I did or walked away from the whole mess? Because Margaret Whitfield thought she was untouchable. Turns out she just picked the wrong house. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, a crooked landlord, or someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them, go ahead and share your story. Trust me, you're probably not the only one.